Some people are more agile with their learning. They retain more. Some people forget immediately everything. Then they are on different places in their own learning curve. So then when we start doing the reminders, how to target those reminders and actually know who's where.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Sales Transformation Lab podcast from UHubs. I'm super excited today because we're launching a new series called Sales Enablement Pioneers. I've got two wonderful ladies with me today. I've got Laura, who's my colleague, Head of Learning Design and Enablement here at UHubs, and our wonderful guest, Hanna from mFiles, based in Finland. Welcome, Hanna.
Thank you so very much for the invitation.
Fantastic. So Hanna is the global enablement leader at mFiles, and Laura and I have been working very closely with Hanna for the last 2 years on sales enablement with the team there. So over to you, Laura, to talk more about the experiences we've had with Hanna and find out more about the golden nuggets she's got to share about sales enablement.
And Hanna, once again, such a pleasure to have you here with us. Hanna, we've been working so closely together for so long.
Indeed.
Doing amazing work, building capability frameworks and supporting your development initiatives and business goals over the years. Yes, it would be really great to get just a bit more understanding and a deep dive into some of the actual work that you're doing. And then we can get into the topic for today.
Excellent. Let's do that. At mFiles, I'm responsible of our go-to-market enablement. So my main target audience is, yes, sales, but I will extend that to CSM and renewals as well. I'll include BDRs from marketing and also our services guys. So basically all our customer-facing roles are in the scope of our go-to-market enablement actions. However, sales as the primary target audience. And we partnered together with UHubs back in the days when we started bringing competence measurement into our metric mix of how impactful our enablement is. And we've been building competence frameworks not only for our sales roles, but also our services roles. And I think that's what has brought us here today.
Wonderful. And so with the topic of today, you and I were discussing something really, really interesting. And this got me so excited for the episode.
Yep.
You were talking about the human limits versus business speed. My first question, just to kind of get this started, is considering like the pace of change in sales, right? It's exploding with AI and everything happening. But at the same time, like it feels like human learning hasn't really evolved. Us as human beings, we pretty much kind of like stay the same at the same speed, at least compared to what's happening. So I'm really curious, like where do you see this tension most clearly today?
I see it everywhere. That's why it keeps me awake at night. This is like the question. And I started regretting prompting this idea because I'd rather discuss something that we've actually solved already. But this is something that kind of still sits there very tightly. But then again, with this topic, I feel that it's time for enablement to go back to basics. Because the enablement challenge, the tension is new changes coming in before previous behavioral expectations have even set into habits. And I'm seeing that in our enablement actions, how we feel the pain of this is that the place where people are with establishing their habits, it kind of becomes wider and widespread, like in reference to user adoption curve. Some people will stay longer as only starters. Some people are adapting faster. But when who do we target our enablement efforts to? So that's a pain. And then another tension is that I feel, I'm not sure if this is true, but this is what I feel. People don't remember what has already been told to them. I'd be wondering, is this like when people are using AI tools more and more, they're actually their retention rate is declining. They don't have to remember everything because you can resurface that same piece of information so easily. And I have been starting to wonder, what does that do to our learning curve?
It's a really good point.
Yeah. And a third I feel like with the rapid changes coming in, again, it feels to me like we are unable to put those changes into a perspective. So, for example, in our company, we have certain strategic initiatives. We have hired people to work on those initiatives solely. Like that's their core job. That's their everyday life. And then when time comes for enablement, those subject matter experts of the topic, they feel like that's the only thing in the world. They want to go way too deep. They want to use way too much time for that enablement, unable to put it into a wider perspective and establish the relevance of that topic for the target audiences that we're addressing. So I think that the tension comes from so many places. It comes from the expectation of speed and then learning times becoming more varied. It comes from not remembering, and it comes from not putting into perspective. I would say those three main points.
That's super interesting, Hanna. That's super powerful. It's called the Hermann Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. It was made in 1885, I think, very old. But after 7 days, you've pretty much forgotten 80% of what you've learned.
Oh, yeah.
So that definitely reminds me of what you're saying there. And then the reinforcement aspect and refreshing.
Exactly.
It's super.
And then when, like, as we said, some people are more agile with their learning. They retain more. Some people forget immediately everything. Then they are on different places in their own learning curve. So then when we start doing the reminders, how to target those reminders and actually know who's where, what message to get to them.
Yes.
I think the target audiences start becoming even more segmented and fragmented, and just-in-time learning, delivering the kind of information that's relevant for that person right at that moment, it becomes increasingly difficult. Yeah.
And you mentioned something interesting, Hanna, and I would like to dive deeper into that, which was how do you know who to target for enablement? What are you looking for?
I bet there's many answers to that questions. But the way that I've solved it, I think that currently our enablement programs, they have a stronger executive sponsorship than ever. I attended an enablement conference with Laura last year, and a lot of enablement professionals were saying how they don't have access to executive leadership to align their priorities. And we have a total opposite. Twice a week, I get to meet with all our C-level go-to-market leaders. It's my steering group. We get to align with the enablement initiatives so that they are taking our strategic initiatives into consideration. They are taking our product launches into consideration. They are taking all our lessons learned from QBRs into consideration. And we commonly sit down and figure out what's important now. And we create our quarterly enablement calendar. And every other week, we confirm if we still see the world in the same way. And that is an extremely powerful method. And we also know who our main target audience is, where are the changes that we need to make, and we target those. And we are fully recognizing that some enablement won't be relevant to some of the learners. And having the executive sponsorship to support these decisions also enables me to, I'm going to say this very brutally, to manage the disappointments of my enablement specialists and professionals. Because obviously we want to deliver only relevant enablement, but we also have to kind of accept the fact that it will not always be possible, especially when we value speed and scalability. Yeah, it's not a perfect world. It's only a good enough of a world.
Yeah, I hear you. And the world's changing fast.
Exactly.
Just to expand a bit on the last point, only because I think this is like something that many enablement professionals are struggling with, kind of like managing that. I can't really deliver at the level that I potentially would like to, versus kind of managing those expectations. What are some of the things that you're doing to handle all of that? And what would be some tips that you could share?
Clear goal for our enablement program. So I'm talking now about continuous enablement. We have two continuous enablement programs. We have the continuous sales enablement program, and we have the continuous technical enablement program, both having slightly different target audiences. But I'll now focus on the continuous sales enablement program. We made the conscious decision that that program revolves around go-to-market plays, and that's the concept. And the goal is to establish behaviors to initiate customer outreach and build pipeline. And that's it. When we choose enablement topics, if it doesn't fit that criteria, it does not go into the program. And of course, there is information sharing and communication outside the program. We don't own communication in our company. So obviously other stuff gets communicated and people get informed. But when we are expecting behaviors around go-to-market plays, especially to create qualified pipeline, that program will deliver what you need. And something that I heard here on the corridors of Tampere, one of our sales reps said that in this speed of change, they have found calmness through the program because they can trust that information, the most relevant information for them, will reach them as long as they stay on the track and learn those weekly releases. And we are extremely disciplined with the delivery. And that has been, I think that has been one of the major shifts that we've made. We have a weekly cadence, 11 consecutive weeks in a quarter, then we have a break at the end of the quarter. And then again, at the beginning of the next quarter, 11 consecutive weeks. We go through 3 go-to-market plays each quarter and what happens with them. And with this ridiculously disciplined methodology, I think we have now successfully established a new learning culture into our company, because now our target audiences, they know the rhythm. They know that continuously change will come. They know that continuously the most relevant information regarding that change will reach them as long as they stay on the train. And don't think this was easy, because it wasn't. We've now been in this rhythm of weekly releases for, I'm looking at the calendar, a bit over a year. And I think we've now turned the page to establish that new learning culture of continuous learning.
Amazing. It's the vision that we've always had here at UHubs about doing continuous enablement, continuous learning and education, and continuous lifelong learning, which is what it's all about. What surprised you the most, Hanna, though? What was the hardest bit for you?
What was the hardest bit? I think I'm going to describe now everything that went into building and establishing that program. The easiest bit, surprisingly, was the executive sponsorship. Yeah. So what kind of initiated this change was that our CRO changed. Our previous continuous enablement program looked exactly like our previous CRO. The new one came in and went, continuous enablement in my leadership looks different. We're going to change it. This is what I want. Clear guardrails of what he expects, how much time he's willing to allocate from his team members each quarter for learning. He also had a very strong opinion about the delivery method. Asynchronous, fully scalable. And all of this also led us to change our learning management system to fully support this change. So changing a learning management system, that's not totally frictionless. There's always some friction there. But yeah, that went smoothly. But then aligning all the stakeholders and subject matter experts to the rhythm of weekly releases, having monthly themes, having the stakeholders change, and continuously delivering quality content where the stakeholders, the subject matter experts, they need to be killing their darlings because it's everything they do. And then we have this constriction of 25 minutes of learning, 25 minutes of task work. Everything that you do needs to fit in this time frame, and exploring what's most relevant for our target audiences. So yeah, getting that stakeholder engine to work, getting our own team operations an engine to work, finding repeatable ways of working. That took its time. And all of this was done while we were already delivering the program. So don't get me wrong, it was a mess, but it's not a mess anymore. And then the final hurdle has been to chase the learning completions. Yeah. And as I said, every course has 25 minutes of learning, 25 minutes of task work. Our leaders are responsible of reviewing the task work. And by the way, the task work is nothing like it's not random tasks. They are always related to initiating customer outreach, always. So it's something that should already be happening in the real life. Our leaders are responsible of reviewing the task work. So not only chasing the learners to learn their courses and complete the task, but also chasing the leaders to review the task and enabling them to do it. Because we don't only publish the content and create the content, we also ensure that it gets learned, and there has to be above 80% learning completion rate on every course.
That's quite complex stakeholder management there.
It is, but oh my God, it's so fun. It is so fun because when we get aligned, when we have the sponsorship, we have the stakeholder collaboration, we have the leadership engagement in advance, during, afterwards, we got the trust from our learners that the important information will reach me, and I can be at peace and focus on my customer work. It truly starts feeling like a village, and we get to celebrate every week. We celebrate that we got the stuff out, and again we deliver this fabulous enablement content that is truly geared towards generating pipeline. It's fun, guys.
I love that you use the word village, which kind of denotes a very close-knit community within, and it is quite an achievement, especially to get the trust from your learners and their engagement, which,
exactly,
as we know, it's quite a huge problem, especially nowadays.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Hanna, just going back a bit, the topic of change, of speed, of learning,
mm-hmm.
and the fact that the human mind can potentially sometimes become a bottleneck, right, when having to deal with everything. Do you find this more difficult with, or is it more like with more tenured people that have been in the company more, as you said, that they've gone through different processes before and now they have to switch it? Or is it perhaps even with like newer people that are joining your...
That question makes me smile because obviously I have my own stereotypes. And if I was really quickly to answer that question, I would say that more tenured M-filers, they are more skillful in blocking the noise, which also tends to lead to longer change periods. Whereas newer M-filers, they might treat each detail equally important and struggle with building the big picture and the kind of the framework of what's actually important. Then again, I think this would be a simplification, to say it like this. And surprised myself, I've started to notice more of cultural changes. We are a global company. We're founded in Finland, but we have now a North America focus. I would dare to say, I'm leaning my opinions here. I'm leaning on the culture map book with my opinions here. But it's as if I'm seeing it in action, that in North America, our colleagues tend to be more action-oriented. They're more open to try something out and really start doing something quickly. It doesn't have to be perfect, but they'll test and pilot and do. Whereas in Nordics countries and in Europe as a whole, we perhaps tend to be more conversation-led. We need to huddle and think it out loud. What makes most sense? Why are we doing this? And for example, if I'm observing the activity data in our systems, I will see our North American colleagues going in and starting to do stuff, and nothing's happening at the European side. But interestingly, the actual impact will start generating at approximately the same time. So North American colleagues might need a couple of iterations of that new habit before it starts creating impact. Whereas European colleagues, as they do the discussion, then when they actually start doing it, the first actions might actually start producing impact immediately. And this has been quite interesting, in my opinion. So that's kind of has led me to think that perhaps over here, some change leadership principles like engage in advance might be perhaps more relevant, more important, whereas more action-driven approach might work over here better. Not quite sure though.
It's interesting. I think we kind of tend to see this with other clients as well, don't we, Ash, where we look at what are some of the capabilities that are kind of driving success in different regions. And we sort of see like some of the key elements, as you mentioned, that kind of growth focus, action oriented, versus also like in in Europe, especially Asia as well, where there's more like relationship focused as well in terms of interactions and how they're kind of managing everything. With that in mind, all of this like different behaviors, what would you say like the biggest misconceptions about behavior change in enablement are?
I think the biggest misconception is that if you tell somebody to do something, that they would do it.
Learned that from my brother when he was like not even 3, I think.
That's the thing. It's life. Like we know it from our personal lives. So why would it be any different in professional lives? And I think it's especially kind of relevant if enablement function exists as a separate function. Like in our company, it's an outsider. People who have not been doing the job come and tell you what to do in your job. Whereas your leader has probably done the job themselves before. So I have a feeling that sometimes it's easier to believe your leader than believe something that comes out of enablement. And I think that's something that we have been now more intentional with in our enablement function, that we need to have this stream of leader engagement. So when we prepare our enablement, we need to check through leaders that it actually resonates with our target audiences. This also primes the minds of our leaders that this is something that's coming out, so that the leaders can then already in advance reinforce the stuff that's coming out of enablement. I genuinely believe that proper enablement cannot be done without leader engagement and leader involvement. And yeah, perhaps that brings us closer to the opportunity of telling somebody to do it and they will try it out.
Are there any other, shall I call them, mechanisms to trying to drive that behavior? Perhaps it's something simple that many people kind of like overlook that you've tried in the past that you've seen successful.
Yeah, connecting the behaviors to the real life. Have you read the book on behavioral design? That book really, truly resonated with me. And there was this wonderful example there about a company that used huge amount of money to send first class snail mail, like traditional post letters. And they were looking at their expenses going like, yeah, we really need to cut this cost and people need to be sending like regular snail mail, not first class. And they started ideating, what can we do about this? And they started putting notes on the walls that don't use first class snail mail, use the economy class instead. But it didn't seem to have any impact. And then it was this one person who started observing people in their real life ways of working and actions. And they noticed that, wait a second, the first class snail mail box is on the way to the cafeteria or something. And the economy box is next to the copying machine in a separate room on another floor. And people are dropping the envelopes to the box on their way to pick coffee. What if we just changed the places of those boxes? That's what they did. And their expenses dropped. So it's not necessarily always about changing behaviors and changing habits, but bringing the new thing closer to the pre-existing habits and ways of work, to the real life.
As they would say, embedding in the workflow rather than...
Exactly. Now you got into the corporate lingo.
Even if it is snail mail, it is embedding in the workflow.
Exactly. And that's it. And that's something that I see as an opportunity. It doesn't keep me awake at night, but the bigger the change we are facing, the longer time I spend with the thought, what's the smallest change we can make to achieve the biggest impact by bringing it to the real life?
That's really powerful. And it also reminds me of, what do you call it, Atomic Habits from James Clear.
Yes. Yeah.
But he has like a similar approach where it's like, whenever you're trying to build like a new behavior, especially if it's different from what you're usually used to,
exactly.
How can you make it first of all easier to do that behavior, but also kind of like tying it into something that you're already doing, so that that transition becomes much smoother.
Exactly. That's why I'm not always a fan of streamlining processes, especially if they're really established habits. We can achieve true impact by actually observing what's happening in the real life and tapping into that.
Now I'm starting to wonder then, how does AI play into all of this? Because it's quite a big change. It's changing everything, right?
It is. Yeah.
In the process of this behavior change, do you think, or where do you see it generally helping? And are there areas where there's like a risk of making things worse? And you were saying it, right? Like people that start to not remember things because everything is faster, more automated.
Yeah, I think it was like a couple of months ago already. My own leader made a really nice segmentation of what we should be thinking about when thinking about leveraging AI. She mentioned these 3 different buckets or lanes. Can we use AI to automate processes or automate a step in a process, even though it would end up creating another step for review, but still that second step would be less time consuming than the original step that could be automated. But automating processes or parts of them. And then the second bucket would be the individual productivity, which I think everybody should be tapping into right now. And if you're not tapping into it, you're making yourself irrelevant. That's my true opinion, because it is a wonderful productivity boost. And then the third bucket is, what could we be doing that we haven't been doing yet, that we haven't had enough resources to do, or we weren't able to do? So that's like the new area. And I think it's actually quite a bit of a challenge to think of all of these as a whole. In our company, we have the privilege of, I feel that we're riding the wave of AI because we have AI in our own product. So it's basically our kind of responsibility as an M-filer to stay updated what AI can do and can't do, and also actively embed it into our ways of working. And I do see that there is a true risk, especially when we're talking about the individual productivity, that we start kind of putting our own retention responsibility on AI. And that is a risk. But when we acknowledge it, we can stay accountable of not doing that and kind of figuring out what's the stuff we need to remember. But in these lanes, in our company, we have already been automating processes or steps in processes, especially in those roles where the work is very process heavy. We haven't done that yet in our own team, in our go-to-market enablement team. I'm not sure if it's because our way of working is constantly changing with different stakeholders, different initiatives, etc. But what we have definitely done, we have boosted our own productivity. Not to become an advertisement pitch, but the AI in our new learning management tool is really good. It's like a proper junior learning designer that actually completes course creation tasks and course design tasks for you. And how I feel about it is that even when I'm at my worst day, where I feel I have zero creativity, I can use that AI tool to get me back to the level where I'm used to being. And I think that's huge.
It's basically like a partner that has got your back.
Exactly. And I already talk about them like a person. If I was to summarize AI into one word, I would say polarizing.
Polarizing to who?
Everywhere. To knowledge workers, to systems that are being used. As I said, if you don't jump on the train, you're making yourself irrelevant. At the moment, I don't think it's a choice to make or to not to make. You just need to do it. You need to explore it. Yeah. And
I mean, it's the big subject everywhere right now, AI, and
it is
polarizing, and it is interesting to see how it's polarizing certain types of people. I was just on the phone earlier to my father, and I was like, "Oh, I've been super busy. I've been doing some AI stuff," and it's like my dad's like, "What's AI?" I was like, "That's what he's asking me, Dad. It's artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence. What's that?" He doesn't know about computers. I was like, so it's this kind of people who won't adopt AI, who don't need to know about it, people who do want to adopt it, and people want to optimize it and use it. And I'm seeing this trend and kind of resistance in some people versus non-resistance to others. And it's quite interesting to see how that...
It's very interesting. A couple of weeks ago, a younger sales rep of ours was talking about leveraging AI in their own work. And I think it was a really interesting comment that they made. They said that it's no wonder that my quota target is going up. I'm like, huh? What do you mean? So now this is a story of how we work in Finland or used to work in Finland as sales reps. But he said before COVID, he was traveling to see customers. So he would do 2 customer meetings per week because it took a day entire day, and then you do your prep work, and then you do your follow-up work. So a couple of meetings per week. That was the expectation. Then came COVID, and everyone went remote. And I have to applaud our company's IT team. Like, I've never seen full remote readiness happen in one day. It was amazing. But yeah, COVID came, everything went remote, and suddenly he was having 2 calls per day. So the expectation of customer engagement grew significantly. And now with AI, because he can have AI doing the prep work for him, then he can also have AI doing the follow-up work, to the extent that he can have 4 meetings per day. And he still feels that he can manage it. Obviously, it's not like 4 meetings each and every day. But just as an anecdote, to him, it's natural that the quota target goes up with these productivity gains that he has gotten throughout previous years.
Fascinating, Hanna. Fascinating speaking to you. There's so much knowledge there, and with all your experience as a global enablement leader and the work that we've done with you and how passionate you are around capability and human skill and helping support people and build people's potential and give them the opportunity to shine. And I love that outlook in how you're actually trying to do all this stuff beyond the lingo of the corporate lingo, which is the enablement programs and stuff, but it's actually the human side of it, which is what I love about what you're trying to do here.
Yeah.
To end the session today, I'd love to ask one question. What do you think future enablement leaders need to develop right now as skills? So if I'm now a junior sales enablement person, I want to become a leader in sales enablement, what skills and traits do you think they need for the future going forward?
So many things come in mind. I'm doing like immediate prioritization in my head.
Who just name 3 things, what would they be?
Yeah.
Top 3 things in your mind.
One thing that I see as a huge strength in my enablement leader in my team, this almost almost innate like thinking for scalability and automation. Yeah, I would argue, I've spent my entire life in the enablement space. I would argue that we have already changed the paradigm on learning expectations. Back in the days, it was face-to-face, hands-on doing engagement, but now it is fully scalable, asynchronous. Also, content design as a skill becomes more relevant. But yeah, almost innate-like thinking for automation and scalability. That's one. Second, stakeholder engagement. You need to hustle like never before. I would argue that tenures become shorter, so your stakeholders are constantly changing.
Good point.
You will have new subject matter experts, new leaders coming in. So you really need to become expert in providing like executive summaries, overviews of programs and their impacts, how to measure them. Yeah, you have to be brave in connecting with people who you've never connected with. Really fast establish that trusted relationship where you can feel comfortable enough raising issues and driving success. And you nearly need to be onboarding stakeholders all the time.
I like that. Not just onboarding new reps and new salespeople, but also onboarding new stakeholders.
You really, truly need to tap into the measurement of enablement and establishing the impact of enablement. Never, ever lose sight of those numbers. Make those numbers for yourself if you don't have them yet. Stay consistent. Insist having the reports that connect to results to make enablement relevant. Knack for automation and full scalability.
Yeah. Hanna, it's been a pleasure. So much more.
It has.
Absolute pleasure.
Yeah. We're going to bring you back for a second episode because there's so much more to talk about. It's been fascinating and great working with you because, like I said, you're not just about the corporate side, you're about the human side of it and great. And you're very measurement driven and you work very closely with the data side and the data impact side, which is what we love here at UHubs. So it's great to work with a sales leader who's a pioneer. Thank you for being our first guest on the opening series.
Thank you
Sales
so much.
Enablement Pioneers series. And I thank you a lot. And Lara, thank you very much for joining us and being the co-host today. So I hope everyone's enjoyed listening today. And I'm sure if anyone wants to reach out to Hanna, Lara, or myself, we're on LinkedIn. Please connect with us.
Definitely.
If you've got any questions, and if there's any aspiring sales enablement people out there, speak to Hanna because she really knows what she's talking about when it comes to this world. especially. Thank you, Hannah.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Hanna.
See you
My
later.
pleasure.
Thanks, Lara.